Mabuhay, Kamustika, welcome. How are you? This is Bob from Love Beyond the Sea. Down-to-earth ways to have a heavenly marriage has been this series, and I've had 3 parts to it, and this is the final part. I kind of feel bad about having to conclude it. By the way, please subscribe to Love Beyond the Sea to get all of the 4 parts of this series. I've got, I don't know how many videos out, but I know I've got about 60 more to produce and put out there, because I want to help foreigners find a wife in the Philippines. And actually, you know, the things I try to teach here can be applied to any marriage. It's just, you know, my area of specialties, so to speak, is with a Filipina. We've been married for 3 years now. We just celebrated our 3rd anniversary, and I want to help guys through this channel. So let's dive into 1 Peter 3:7. Likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers be not hindered. Wow, that's quite a statement there. But living with your wives in an understanding way has to do with, what's the word? Being considerate of her. You need to know what makes her tick. You need to keep your eyes open and watch how she responds to certain things and to certain people. You kind of have to be an expert of your wife, and you need to be considerate of her. You need to know how what you do is going to affect her. In other words, you're married, you're not single anymore, so you can't live like you're single. You really can't just do all the things that you could do before you married her, because if you consider her thoughts and feelings, that's not going to go well, because you're married. So some changes will have to be made, and hopefully I can help, you know, with this series. So that's 1 Peter 3:7. That your prayers be not hindered. I mean, in other words, if a husband does not consider his wife, he doesn't want to get to know her, he doesn't show her honor as the weaker vessel, speaking, I think, mainly physically weaker, his prayers will be hindered. God will just stand in the way. He will not answer them. Why? Because the husband is not loving his wife in the manner that Christ loved his church. He's not even being considerate of her. He's not wanting to understand her. He's not giving her honor as the weaker vessel. And God promises here that your prayers may not be hindered if you obey this verse, but that means that they will be if you do not. Questions to ask from reading this. Am I asking questions to get to know my wife better? Even though we've been married for 3 years, there's still a lot to know. We got married in less than 8 weeks. We have a lot to learn about each other. How about this? Do I remember the things that she tells me about herself? I don't want to keep asking her the same question over and over again, because that means I didn't lock into it the first time. So when I ask her something, it has to be important, as important to me as, I don't know, our football team. I just have to hear it one time, and I'll remember it, I guess, forever. And her life has to be the same way. I have to be even more interested in her than my other interests. Do I give my wife my full attention when messaging or using a webcam? Do I always consider the differences between the Philippines and where I am from? That would help me to get to know her and to consider why she says and does the things that she does. Do I consider her body language, you know, non-spoken communication? An example, before she arrived in America, I was trying to understand my wife's reluctance to accept monetary help from me. We were already pledged to be married. On the 18th day we got engaged, had to send money ahead for the wedding. So yeah, she took that because we needed it, you know, for the wedding, for me to have a place to stay, and all of that. Now, after we were married, I assumed she would accept money without comment and with gratitude, but she usually declined, which kind of bothered me. She said she didn't need it, she would be all right, she has enough food to eat for the day, she'll be okay. It's the typical Filipino one day at a time living, and that kind of appealed to me because I tend to get caught up in thinking way ahead. Part of that's just being a man, and men tend to be the leaders in society, and we want to know how to get where we're going and what it's going to look like, and we devote ourselves to that. But we can spend so much time thinking about the future that we miss thinking about the present, and that's one way of many that my wife helps me. She helps me to focus a lot on today, what's going on right now. But my wife, maybe because we were newly married and she was kind of still used to being single, but since she's been here, she's been more open to receiving help from me. I had to keep reminding her, well, hon, we're married now. You're my responsibility. I need to help you. It's okay if you accept money. It doesn't mean that I think you're helpless. I try to explain to her why it's okay, but, I didn't want to force it on her, and I didn't. It was hard, but, if she felt like, no, I want to prove to this man I'm responsible, I can take care of myself, I kind of backed off, and it was probably for our good. Another example here of trying to use this verse in a helpful way, I communicate once in a while with one of our marriage sponsors to keep myself improving in our marriage, and my sponsor can help me with understanding my wife because my wife and his wife know each other, so I can ask him anything. And this was a big help for us early on. As we have grown in our relationship, I have not needed to consult with him as much, but early on I most certainly did. And I took advantage of the sponsor, and I think that you probably should. Sponsors, important people in your wife's life that, depending on the size of your wedding or the type of your wedding, will be there. We had 10 or 12. We met most of them before we got married, and there was just this one couple that I really clicked with, and they've kind of been my help to this very day. I've been willing to help support my wife's parents with her ideas, and her ideas have been good ones. Buying some things for her family, like getting 2 sidecars for the scooter so they can have income when she's gone, because you get more people that way. And we we fixed a motorcycle, a scooter, that was actually my wife's. She didn't drive it much in the Philippines, but her brothers do, and so they need that for pesos. So I think it's helpful if that thing is working. So I've helped out with that, and any way I can to support her family, I have tried to help. Another example, learning what you can about the culture in the Philippines will help to understand your wife better. One of the ways to do this is to go to the Philippines. At first, I thought about a fiancé visa, and then my wife wanted me to go to the Philippines and meet her, probably to show that I was very serious about her, and that was important to her, and something that was attractive to me. She wanted me to be committed to her and not play games, and I like that because I didn't want to play games either. But going to the Philippines was a real eye-opening experience for me when I went there the first time to meet her. I mean, I couldn't believe the heat, but also the poverty. It was shocking. The first time in the Philippines to go to get married and be so far away, and the different environment and everything, it was such a surreal experience. It doesn't strike me as quite the same now. Now I try to see a lot of the positive, and we're going back soon, and I very much look forward to that. But going there to the Philippines will really help you understand how she's grown up, all her life. Another example, keep abreast of how things are going with her family back in the Philippines. Just ask her, talk to her about her family. This not only helps you know what's going on, but will help you understand your wife more, because her family is very important to her. My wife has not exactly fallen in love with football here, something that's been important to me most of my life, but I have to realize that they don't play football in the Philippines, or even baseball, really. Basketball is king there. LeBron James is king there, and they like boxing too. Think of Manny Pacquiao. To her credit, she did go to a college football game with me and maybe a half dozen basketball games, and I really appreciate that. She thought the football was too loud and too hot. It kind of was. It was early in the year, but it means something to me that she was willing to go, and at least now when we watch on TV, she has experienced part of the culture of being here in Nebraska. So be aware that she has left her country to go what must feel like 1,000,000 miles away to be with you, and that's going to take some time for her to adjust. Be sympathetic to her being homesick, and don't pressure her on trying to get over it too quickly. And eventually I'll have a video on homesickness. A lot of ideas, not a lot of time. Be cognizant of the fact she may not know you very well yet, as dating a Filipina is different than being with someone side by side and face to face the way it usually is done. It is likely true in a foreigner-Filipina relationship that you will have more to learn about each other when you are actually together for good. So be patient and let her grow into her role as your wife. Galatians 5:22 and 23, I think this will be the final one. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. These are qualities, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, that will help make you a wonderful husband. Questions I get from this: does my wife think that my love is reliable and consistent? How else can I show my love to her? Does she sense that our relationship gives me joy? Does it give her joy, our relationship? Does my wife have a sense of peace about her relationship with me? Or is she afraid of something? Do I use kind speech? How can I convince my wife that there will be no other women? Do I lose my temper easily? Have I forsaken all other women in my mind? And some examples I apply from that verse: apologizing to her if I raise my voice, and I certainly did more early on, and I realize she doesn't like that, so I have to try to stop that. So, faithfulness, I comment or like on her Facebook page once in a while that I like her posts. I send her music videos that express my love for her. I have a Twitter account that's just for two of us. I can look back on that and it'll remind me of our history, and she can look at it and remind herself of how we met and the songs that I pick out, like the ones in the music video I did here, something called Music for Her Heart. Give you some ideas for those songs. And I've done that to kind of help show her that I am faithful to her in small, little ways. I also made a coffee mug when I got back with her photos on it. And I tell her I watch videos from our wedding ceremony and the wedding DVD. I have a license plate that I have our anniversary on, not that I would ever forget it. I have her photos as screensavers here at home and at work, and on our phones. For a while I had our wedding tarpaulin or poster hanging in the wall in the front of my computer when we lived in the apartment. I even asked her to make a t-shirt that said "Bob loves Isa" on it, which she did. And she knows that I enjoy listening to our wedding songs. And even on camera, after we got married for 3.5 months, I just wore every day one of the 5 shirts that she bought for me when we were in the Philippines. One each day I wore it just so she can see that I was wearing those shirts and I like them. Another small way is on Skype. I have it there in my profile as being a happily married man. This might seem corny, but it's just a little way of showing that she's important to me and I am faithful to her. Now, I often tell her how much help she was when I visited her to get married. She handled a lot of stuff. And I detail the things that she does. When I say, "Hon, I'm grateful to you," I like to tell her why specifically, how much I enjoyed our honeymoon and so on. If you weren't sure what love was before this 4-part video series, you have learned an extremely valuable lesson, I think, on what love is. It isn't every day you learn something as impactful as the meaning of love. But this channel is about love, and loving a Filipina, a great choice for a wife. I hope you can see that you can love your wife by applying these principles of love to your marriage. I have shown you many examples of ways I try to do that, and they can be done by any husband. If you have any ideas, feel free to share them here in the comments section. But it must start with the mindset that it's the right thing to do. When I embrace what's being taught here in these verses, then I can be convinced to give myself to them and that it's the right thing to do. It will involve being unselfish and committed to doing good to my wife regardless of how she may be treating me. I don't normally talk much about in this channel about the wife's behavior toward her husband, because I'm more concerned about how the man treats his wife. There are other women that should be talking to your wife about being a good wife. At least that's what the Bible teaches. I always have an agenda, of course. I'm her husband. But when she hears it from other godly women, that is what's going to make the difference. So regardless of how she treats me, I still need to love her. So remember that Jesus Christ doesn't love his bride, the church, only when she is good and obedient. He loves her while she was yet a sinner. She's in rebellion to him, even to this day. But his love is forever. He says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And the type of love that you can have from God himself if you ask him to be your Savior and lead you to do his will in your life. That's probably the very most important step in finding a good wife, is to be in God's will. And the first part of God's will is that you become saved. So, the book of John in the New Testament can teach you how to become saved. So I think this is probably the most important and significant and impactful video series I may ever make on love beyond the sea.